Hi everyone, this is Steve Tatarunis, Technical Support Manager at Listen Inc. And today we're going to review some of the options available to you if you're working from home and don't have access to a calibrated audio interface. No hardware, no problem. Because if you have an audio device that shows up in Windows Control Panel under Sounds, it can most likely be configured to work with SoundCheck. So today I'm going to show you a few examples. First would be onboard sound. If your laptop has onboard microphone and speakers, these can be configured in SoundCheck hardware. Next is virtual audio cable. It's a very interesting software application that creates a virtual loopback between SoundCheck's output and input, so we can easily pass signal between the two. There's a similar application called Soundflower that's available for Mac OS. Lastly, if you have a USB speaker and a USB microphone or even a USB headset, we can configure those in SoundCheck hardware to be used as an audio device. So let's switch over to SoundCheck and I can demonstrate some of these options to you. So let's open up hardware and we can see in our default SoundCheck configuration after a fresh install, we have some placeholders here for Amp Connect and a WDM driver. But since I don't have an Amp connected to my system at the moment, all of these options are grayed out. But if we hit the device drop down, we can see that there are some available WDM devices here. There's the microphone in my headset that I'm currently using here. There's the microphone in the laptop, and then there's the virtual cable. So what I'm going to do is I have a few different setup files here that I've pre-configured for this demonstration. I'm going to load up the onboard hardware here. And as you can see, here's the microphone, internal microphone, and here are the internal speakers. I've arbitrarily assigned a VP of 2. The calibration of my input and output are really unknowns here, but I've found that in most cases a VP in the range of 2 or 3 works pretty well, won't get you into any trouble, and will allow you to make pretty good recordings using SoundCheck. We're using analog signal paths, sample rate of 44.1, and 16-bit depth. Our latency is set to 0. So let me open up my example sequence for onboard sound. And you can see in my sequence here, I'm going to be using direct outputs and direct inputs. So I'm essentially using the calibration of my hardware here. I'm not using any other calibration except for those VP values over there in hardware that we just set up. It's a very simple sequence. I've set up a stimulus, a play and record step, some analysis, and a display. So let's hit the start button and see what happens. Okay, so there we have our frequency response, distortion. There's our recorded time waveform. Over here I have a few values that I wanted to show you. One of these is the max FSD, which shows us that the full scale of our recording is about -10 full scale, which is a very respectable value. And also over here we have our record delay of 17.3 milliseconds, which is also not bad considering. And if we hit start again, we can see that everything here is pretty repeatable. So, you know, it's not the greatest frequency response in the world, and the distortion gets a little high on the low end here, but we're passing signal out and in, capturing it and analyzing it without too many issues. So it's a reasonable alternative if you don't have a calibrated audio interface. So let's go back into hardware and import the virtual audio cable setup. And we pretty much have the same parameters, except we've changed the device type. Our VPs are still 2, We're still treating it like an analog signal path, although with the virtual cable we could also use the digital option. And we've maintained the same sample rate and bit depth, and again our latency is 0. So let's save this configuration, open up our virtual cable example sequence here, and this is essentially a slightly modified version of self-test that we would use to test a audio interface that's looped back onto itself. So let's hit the start button and cross our fingers. And that's exactly what we would expect with the virtual cable loopback. We're flat frequency response, no harmonic distortion, and very low noise. So we're passing signal here. There's a bit of latency that we're measuring here, 814 samples. So there's the virtual cable. Now back over to hardware, and let's set up for USB hardware. And I'm going to use the headset that I have on my head at the moment for this demonstration. So here's the headset microphone. Here are the speakers on the headset. You'll notice because this is a USB device, I'm going to use digital calibration, which implies a VP of 1 on both the input and the output. And we're going to keep our default sample rate, bit depth, and latency that we've been using all through this demonstration. Over to the USB example sequence. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the headset from my head, and I'm just going to position the boom mic in between the two ear pads and capture the output that way. So there's the measurement that I've made using the USB headset and microphone. You can see we have a good recorded time waveform, a decent looking frequency response, believable distortion measurement. So there's a quick review of a few hardware options you can consider when working from home without a calibrated interface. If you need help getting any of this set up on your system, feel free to contact us at support@listeninc.com. Thanks for watching.